Social productivity. We have one drug that's legalized in alcohol, and we've seen what that does to economic output. It significantly lowers economic output, and it seems ridiculous to think that we would legalize a drug that encourages you to sit on your butt on the couch and be a couch potato. That would decrease economic output even more. And so through this, we will be able to better understand the effects of what we're doing. By decriminalizing this and by opening up a dialogue and not relying on outside substances to deal with our outside issues and our internal issues, we will be better suited as a society to deal with things. Thank you.
All right, at this point, we're going to have a very open cross debate between the two sides. We'll do 20 minutes of that. So all participants, feel free to interact with one another without moderation.
So, do you really think that there's absolutely no benefit to having a foreign chemical brought into your body, like antibiotics or anesthesia during surgery?
So we use marijuana for recreational use in our relaxing time after work will save our lives.
Well, but so I'm just wondering if that was like a across-the-board ban on foreign substances into the body. As
no, I was talking about for recreational use to specify my point, and it's to the effect of a more psychological, a more mental effect, because the drugs that we use for recreational use, whether it's opioids or alcohol or Xanax, etc., are not ingested to serve a health benefit. They're ingested or consumed to form some psychological or mental void.
So, okay, so we agree on the void thing, but I'm just seeing a massive difference between, let's say, opioids and heroin, which I'm just going to level with y'all. At the high school I was zoned for originally.
I was waiting for you to say, I've tried them.
Oh, well, I mean, I have. Oh, well, not heroin. I mean, Jesus.
You're in Deke. What am I supposed to think?
Okay. Jasper's garage band aside. The point I'm saying is that it really seems to me like there's a huge difference between heroin, where one actually just loses contact with reality, and something that I'll agree with you. Taking anything to specifically handle your problems or make them go away is not a healthy way of consuming anything. I mean, caffeine in that way is bad. Working out that way is bad. But I don't see how, smoking a joint and listening to Moon Taxi really causes any problems.
Opioids are legal and controlled by the FDA, and look how well that's going, right? It's actually become an epidemic in our country at this time, and I say this with all due respect, this campus has suffered from that significantly so. So legalizing it doesn't necessarily make it better, right? And that's not to say that marijuana and opioid and some of these opioids have the same strength, but they're still addressing the same causes, right? So you can't, what's the old adage is that you can't do the same thing over and over again and expect different results. It's the definition of insanity. So is this how you want to spend your formative years, right? Numbing yourself every evening and you come home. Like, what did you do from 20 to 30? Well, I don't really remember, but it seems like it was nice. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, is this where we set our goals as a species, or even as a country, that we just, we just want to numb out when we're done doing what we have to do?
Well, I mean, okay, I'm willing to agree that that's definitely not how anyone should be addressing anything. But I'm seeing a huge problem with. Okay, I'm going to level with you. I'm seeing a huge problem with the fact that everyone seems to be so against anything that could possibly be relaxing. That the fact that we have to say the terms like veg out on the couch, become a couch potato, as such a negative, or how it will lower the efficiency of the market, that's an obsession that I think is just wrong. What's the problem with actually relaxing?
I wouldn't say it's true relaxation. I would say it's a false relaxation provided by an ulterior substance.
So is listening to music bad?
Well, I would say it is a true relaxation. But it's one that you have to have that substance in order to achieve. And the mass use of the substance is not safe.
Of course.
Okay? So, therefore, there's plenty of ways to relax. Anybody heard of mindfulness ever? Hasn't everybody heard of mindfulness? Why do you think that's such a thing? Yoga, meditation. I mean, there's 1,000 different ways people are now doing what? And I'm not talking about over-exercising. We're talking about activating your own reward system within your body to enjoy the life, the relaxation, and everything that you've been seeking. We already have everything intact that we need. It's built in. Evolution is a glorious, glorious thing, right? And we already have what we need in place. No need to enhance.
You want to let them jump on us once? And
Yeah, of course.
then... You want to ask us anything before we just keep attacking you? Or?
Sure. Yes, I'm interested. I would say one of the major challenges with the situation is the financial aspect, right? And this has become a big deal, particularly in like Colorado, Washington State, where they're starting to see the tax returns as they're coming back. Taxes are a big issue in this country constantly, even though we have some of the lowest taxes in the world, especially corporately. But I think it comes down to a deeper question. So is this really what we want to focus on? Do we really want our national conversation to be based around how we can squeeze out a few taxes when we know that just the legalization in a few states has already led to more deaths?
Let me say something. As you know, right, in my heart, I'm with you guys, right? ISIS. I'm way past you. Liberals, surrounded by liberals. But one of the dilemmas I absolutely, I'm not concerned about legalization in terms of, oh boy, a bunch of people will make money off selling brownies with Snoop Dogg on them or something. But the reality is, I mean, it's twofold. What I'm really kind of hearing here, and I don't mean to characterize this in a negative way, is I'm saying shameful surrender. This hasn't worked, let's give up. Here we kind of have the Vietnamization camp, right? Well, we'll decriminalize, we'll slow down, we'll try and deal with it. Because there's real problems, you're kind of like Ho Chi Minh City or something.
Oh, I'm
yeah. And one of the dilemmas I have is simply, I mean, what are we going to do? We're going to spend money to address the gaping void in people's modern lives. That's just a new conversation, and I agree. But the train of thought you're giving to me, I'm wondering, well, then why aren't we banning alcohol? I'm all for it. I don't mean that meanly. It's tough. Why aren't we banning cigarettes? I'm saying something I don't really want, which is I just don't see this being effective. So let's pull the money back so we can try and hold the line on the opioids. Maybe we can regulate how much THC goes into certain brands. Maybe this is just the best deal we can get. And how are you guys proposing to really solve that problem of, and I agree with you, people aren't happy in the modern world. We all agree, right? 20% of people are smoking 30% of pot because they're poor and the jobs aren't there and they're sad. That $3.6 billion we're saving doesn't fix that. How are we going to do that? How do we help people? I mean, that seems like a massive investment, and I'll be cynical. I'm not sure the country's interested in it.
Well, I mean, so in response to the tax returns, well, I'm a libertarian, and I think all taxation is theft. So I mean, that's stolen.
Ho Chi Minh City.
Yeah. So I mean, that's where I feel. But on top of that, I think that conversation generally leaves out other interesting statistics. So, for instance, how much money is actually saved when law enforcement isn't actually going after criminals. So, for instance, Humboldt County, which is considered the Napa Valley of weed, they've done documentaries on their sheriffs multiple times. And the interesting thing is that during the growing season, which, interestingly enough, has immigrants come out and from all over the world to cut the plants, they're called trimmigrants. They flock in. Anyway, the sheriffs track them to find where the growers are. But during that time, that entire process, they end up working, just 80, 90-hour weeks. They spend, and the county pays for that. They're paid. These people are paid to sit around and hunt down these growers. And so in 2010, a Harvard economist, Jerry Miran, estimated $8 billion would be saved in actual law enforcement if we just decriminalized weed. If we made it for legal for recreational use, that money would, it would go into the FDA, I'm sure, but then we'd be saving all that money from law enforcement, and then we could actually handle important stuff like violent crimes.
And that's just the federal money, the 3.6 billion is the state money.
Yep.
So two things. One, addressing the inner situation of people in the world today. I think that there have been groups within the larger society that have been trying to do this since there have been people, right? Or at least since the advent of civilization. So, but what I'm suggesting is that by once again doing the same thing, so we kind of lost the alcohol fight. We lost the nicotine fight, although I think there's a little bit of headway there recently, right? Public places, people can't smoke as openly as they once did. So I think there is some traction in those areas. So we just keep losing fights? Do we just give up? Do we let go? Or we start to try to think about it a different way, right? People are making significant movements across the country in order to have a richer life, right? And by richer, I don't mean necessarily wealthier. Because someone who has 6 houses and 12 cars and everything they ever wanted, when they deal with the loss of somebody who's important to them, it's no different than if you don't have money, right? It still hurts just as much. So when it comes down to that, it's about being human that we're really addressing. And the focus of our society on the lesser good of our nature has not really served us well. And I think that the more you look, you see people moving in a direction that is healthier. As far as taxation being theft, we need to have a whole other debate on that, because I don't know if you drive a car, but you're in real trouble because you're not allowed to use the roads anymore. No hospitals. Let me go down the line. Yeah, you don't use cell phone, do you?
Oh, I wish.
No.
The fact that they know where I am right now terrifies me.
So that's its own problem. But there is a lot of money. I totally agree with your point that it could be saved by shifting and decriminalizing this drug, moving it away from the massive number of people who are in prison who really don't need to be in prison, right? I think this is a glorious opportunity to save those tax dollars. And when you're talking about, what were they called?
Oh, trimmigrants.
Trimmigrants.
They trim their immigrants.
It's once again, that's part of a larger issue, right? I mean, that's part of the larger issue of immigration and the benefits to the corporate structure that immigration provides that they don't actually want to come to the table and talk about. So it's kind of like racism. Like, we can talk about how this, legalizing marijuana will be a huge surge for racism, but I bet racism doesn't go away if we legalize marijuana, right? Police are going to profile, or let's say police do currently profile people of color, particularly men of color, right? So we just legalize marijuana and that takes it away. That's like, police also profile people of color for robbery. So we're just going to legalize robbery, that'll solve the problem, right? Like, I don't think that this is the solution by saying, yeah, go ahead, we're just have at it, see how it works out, right? Like, maybe that's not the way that we need to go about it.
Well, that seems slightly unfair. Now, I'm just a simple country professor, not a professional debater, like everyone here. But I mean, the point is not this will solve racism. You know, Jesus appears again. He goes to Sydney for 4 years, right? All world problems are solved. Notice how quickly I've become a demagogue. I mean, this is unjust. And yeah, and I want to be upfront. What you're proposing in terms of decriminalization does address that injustice. It's not the only injustice here. But I do want to raise another point. If I could get a couple of volunteers. Mr. Hannah? Sure. Come up here. Mr. Crum, come up here. I'm going to engage in some shameless pandering. Can you take one of these?